Where the f is the Manic Pixie Dream Girl? I was on a Cillian Murphy bender a few months ago, and I stumbled upon Watching the Detectives. It's a 2007 romantic comedy starring Cillian Murphy as Neil and Lucy Liu as Violet. The viewing experience is as close as you can get to doing coke, heroin, and a mystery concoction of pills while surgically attached to a rose toy. Well, it's the closest I can get. I don't know what you do in your free time. Just listen to this 2020 Letterboxd review by Devin. I agree with the moral of the story. Film boys not only deserve to be psychologically tortured, but secretly want it. For 93 feverish minutes, Violet executes atrocities against Neil previously only carried out by the United States government.
And maybe the boy!
Hollywood doesn't make movies like Watching the Detectives anymore. The chaos, the yearning, the Cillian Murphy crying while playing baseball. The industry is also in a shortage of Violets. Though the press tour for Watching the Detectives exclusively referred to Violet as a femme fatale, hindsight likens her more to Ramona Flowers than Kitty Collins. She's a quintessential Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Another Letterboxd review of the movie states, if someone told me the main characters were written by John Green, I would believe them. Manic Pixie Dream Girls and femme fatales do have a lot in common. See the stage notes for more. The main difference is time. Watching the Detectives premiered at Tribeca in May of 2007. Only a few months earlier, in January, was the term Manic Pixie Dream Girl coined, which means that it's only been about 9 years. This video is not sponsored. Brands, all my homies hate brands. I'll make this quick. My name is Shania and I do my own stunts. That means that every inch of writing, research, costuming, editing, and packaging that you see on this channel is done entirely by me. Except for the theater box. My husband helped with labor, but I was really the brains behind the operation. Sponsors have become increasingly harder to lock in, which is kind of sad and kind of dangerous for our job sector because sponsors make up a majority of our income. Engagement across the board is down, and I'm sure a lot of your favorite independent creators are struggling. No one knows why, but really who cares? Because here's the solution. I want to play a game. You have 3 options. Throughout the course of this video, if I 1, make you laugh, even a little chuckle, 2, tell you something that you didn't know previously, or 3, at any point in this video, you think, damn, she ain't kinda looking a little good. Consider sending $1 to my Ko-fi or subscribe to my $2 Patreon. You can unsubscribe later if you want, but walk with me. As the hottest, smartest YouTuber you have ever watched, I think I'll earn my keep. I provide consistency. Don't look at last year's posting schedule. There was a crisis. Otherwise, I am always stylish, always researched, nuanced, and entertaining. And a secret 5th thing, because I kept my thumb up for some reason. You can check out my commentary channel and my other Patreon tiers for more relaxed, parasocial-friendly content. Hate that word. And look, if you don't have a disposable income, do not send me money. Do not. The best thing you can do to help is like this video, subscribe to my channels, share my videos with others, and comment something down below. The comment doesn't even have to be nice. It doesn't even have to be, it doesn't have to be positive. I have fought Barbs and Manosphere Bros at 40% of my power. I think I can handle myself. And that's it. Thank you to no one for not sponsoring this video. Okay, bye. There are a few fatal flaws to this discourse. The first is that most people don't actually know what a Manic Pixie Dream Girl is. Every woman, fictional or real, with colorful hair or wacky fashion makes the list. Bonus points if she's quirky. While these assumptions are largely incomplete, they do have some truth to them. The pixie is like a novelty item, especially to the film's leading man. She has a whimsical lust for life that no one else on planet Earth seems to possess. Enter stage left. The costuming department. The Pixie's fashion is painstakingly curated by writers and designers to convey her free-spiritedness. She wears clashing patterns, unique pieces, and lots of color. You can watch Modern Gurlz' video on the topic for more. You're supposed to be able to look at the Pixie and just know. That lady is the last lady on Earth with childlike wonder. She doesn't pay rent. She doesn't file taxes. She's just a girl, just a fantasy woman who sweeps in like a glittery breeze. At the turn of 2007, Nathan Rabin coined the term Manic Pixie Dream Girl in a review of Cameron Crowe's film Elizabethtown. The movie, Rabin argued, is a bona fide fiasco. I remember thinking, how bad can a Cameron Crowe movie be? He was then shot 87 times. Like all Pixie narratives, Elizabethtown is a deeply disturbed movie filled with deeply unserious characters. Drew is a shoe designer whose project single-handedly tanks the company he works for. He becomes a pariah, even getting dumped by the baddest bitch this side of Iowa. In the aftermath, he conspires to take his own life. But his plan for doing so is absurd. He empties his apartment of mostly everything save for 2 items, a batch of knives and an exercise machine. These are the ingredients of his homemade, John Kramer-style, wholly inefficient stabbing machine. But just when he's about to use it, his sister calls, informing him of his dad's death. And that's what kickstarts the plot. Who cares? I don't. On the way home to Kentucky, Drew meets Claire, played by Kirsten Dunst. Now, Claire is a flight attendant on the second plane headed straight to the tower of Nathan Rabin's sanity. He writes, Dunst embodies a character type I like to call the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. She exists solely in the fevered imaginations of sensitive writer-directors to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures. There's a special kind of frustration in watching Claire Colburn desert herself time and time again to appeal to the most milquetoast man on the planet. But that's what Manic Pixie Dream Girls do. Men are their center, their universe. Everything Claire needs in life, she gets from Drew. If he doesn't breathe, she has no oxygen. If he doesn't sleep, she has no dreams. Her character is a map he traces the markings of only to explore himself. Maps don't have thoughts or opinions or desires. Maps guide. Maps sit quietly in the glove box awaiting instruction. In the span of 123 minutes, we learn nothing about Claire besides what we learn in relation to Drew. She loves helping. True, she might have a boyfriend, which sucks for Drew. Everything about her is a mirage, a specter projected onto water who disappears at the slightest disturbance. The Manic Pixie Dream Girl is a particular male fantasy of being saved from depression and ennui by a fantasy woman who sweeps in like a glittery breeze to save you from yourself, then disappears once her work is done. For example, just one extremely long phone call montage with Claire cures Drew. He no longer wants to sit on his stabby chair of doom. Claire is so good at her job, in fact, that by fixing Drew, she inadvertently gives him the tools to fix everything around him, including the huge plot conflict that started before she was introduced. That's a lot of power and influence for one person to hold, and yet the pixie is still rendered useless by the narrative. There are moments where the dream girl seems to have a self-led desire or a trait that, God forbid, transforms her into a real person rather than a prop. But listen, and we have to be quiet because if we're too loud, we might alert the men about our autonomy, and then they'll beat it out of us via cringe and humiliation. Claire is so undeveloped as a character that she could be anyone. She could be ripped from the fabric of the movie entirely and replaced with a light pole, and the movie would go on unaffected. You're not watching two people experience life and fall in love with each other. You're watching a man have a delusionationship with a mannequin and calling it romance. If I watched Elizabethtown on a dull January day in 2007, I too would invent new language to hate on it more efficiently.
Say, Drake, I hate you like I'm young.
1, 2, 3, 4.
By these standards, it's clear that Manic Pixie Dream Girls are relegated to the realm of fiction. Real people can't fill her shoes. Real people have interiority, thoughts, goals, ambitions, everything that pixies lack. Flesh and blood women are inevitably more complex and substantial than the superficial waifs of our collective pop culture fantasies. As if Elizabethtown wasn't torture enough, I read and watched a handful of other Manic Pixie media for this video. It was simultaneously boring and rage-inducing, like I was being sedated and force-fed uppers all at once. I read 2 John Green books because whether he agrees with this or not, he has become the quintessential pixie peddler. I also watched a few films that were classically aligned with the archetype. All of these things share commonalities, which I use to build a framework for the typical pixie narrative. Jennifer Gauck argues that the enduring voice of the pixie narrative is that of a man. He's usually from the suburbs and definitively white, cis, straight, and middle to upper class. Everything we learn about the pixie is filtered through this man. These narratives also tend to have a formulaic plot. It starts with our introduction to the sad, pathetic life of a sad, pathetic man somewhere in America. And then, the pixie appears suddenly in his life, sprinkling wisdom, beauty, and whimsicality as she comes. Damn it, girl, you making a mess. A relationship buds between them, especially during a whirlwind adventure. Bonus points if it's a road trip or some other kind of impractical excursion involving a car, larceny, or kidnapping. Instead of spending 20 years behind bars for these actions, the couple usually gets away with it, but their relationship reaches a roadblock. They have an argument, there's a revelation of secrets, the pixie might even share her tragic backstory, and then nothing. She disappears, and the leading man is left to contemplate his life. It's usually around this time that he heeds the ancient pixie wisdom and applies it to his problems, thereby fixing his own life. In Paper Towns, for instance, the disappearance and suspected suicide of Margot Roth Spiegelman equips the dorky Quentin with the ability to restore order in his high school. Toward the end of the narrative, the pixie usually returns, that is, if she isn't dead. There's a brief resolution between the couple. They might kiss and make up, maybe even declare their love. But in the end, the pixie decides that there's some other town in America that she must go fix, preferably with a loser man in it. And so she leaves, never to be seen again.
I should probably disappear. I still need a new life.
We as viewers must then endure a prolonged inner monologue from the leading man about the intricacies and philosophies of life and death and yada yada yada. Oh my god, who cares? John Green, this one's for you. It's a metaphor, you see. You put the killing thing between your lips, but you don't give it the power to do the killing. Oh, brother. Mr. Green came into my life the same as any other emo zillennial. When I was 14, wearing prescriptionless glasses and using Tumblr to reblog Pizza Heart graphics and aesthetic pictures of disembodied studded shorts. Take me back. I borrowed The Fault in Our Stars from a friend of a friend, read it in record time, and handed it back crying. The 911 call center switchboard was about to light up like a Christmas tree because I was going to kill myself. Relax. It's just a metaphor. Some have argued that The Fault in Our Stars subverts the Manic Pixie archetype. Instead of a woman being the whimsical voice of reason, it's a teenage boy. And like certain other pixie narratives, Augustus Waters dies at the end. As a metaphor. If Foss, that's what I'm calling Fault in Our Stars, by the way, if Foss truly is a gendered flipped answer to the pixie, then it would be what Jennifer Gauck calls an interventionist text. These are bodies of work that attempt to, quote, intervene, play with, or challenge, end quote, the pixie trope. And they're quite popular nowadays. Gauck argues that the pixie archetype no longer exists in its pure form. Too many people have caught on to the underlying misogyny of the matter. Audiences and writers alike are eager to create and witness complex characters. Fatal flaw number 3, interventionist texts rarely ever succeed. Not when they depend on the typical pixie framework to tell their story. After Foss, I swore off John Green books. But I knew that for this video, I had to reignite that Christmas tree. 911 operators beware. Also, John, if you're seeing this, don't worry, it's all in good jest. In fact, it's a metaphor. Damn it. So I tried to read Looking for Alaska. The problem is I read Paper Towns first, and anyone who has ever read both can attest to the fact that they read like one long 600-page novel. The leading men are identical in nature, down to their love for listicles. The settings are similar, and so are the pixies. They are beautiful, enigmatic, quirky teenage girls with quirky teenage names whose entrance into the leading man's life blows the roof off of their boring suburban town. I couldn't get through looking for Alaska, but just from the little I read and based off some key sources, it's far more pixie-ish than Paper Towns. That's because John Green semi-wrote Paper Towns as a rebuttal to the pixie problem he produced in Looking for Alaska. In 2013, he published this Tumblr post, in all caps, might I add. Paper Towns is devoted in its entirety to destroying the lie of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. The novel ends, and this is not really a spoiler, with a young woman essentially saying, "Do you really still live in this fantasy land where boys can save girls by being romantically interested in them?" I do not know how I could have been less ambiguous about this without calling the novel "The patriarchal lie of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl must be stabbed in the heart and killed." I just want to know who he's yelling at. John's not wrong. How can he be? He wrote the book. He gets at least 85% say in what it's about. At times, Paper Towns comes across heavy-handed in its pursuit to teach us that people are people, not plot devices. But that doesn't mean the novel succeeds in creating a substantially developed woman character. Telling us that the woman in your novel is a person is not the same as making her a person. In fact, Margot Roth Spiegelman still features the emptiness of the manic pixie archetype. She acts as a vehicle for Quentin to learn how to let loose and have empathy for other people, especially people he finds attractive. While the novel is markedly different from other pixie narratives, like Elizabethtown, for instance, the difference, quote, is not enough to fully subvert the MPDG trope, Mina argues. If anything, it only affirms the male character's agency and humanity at the expense of the female's, as her humanity becomes contingent on the male's recognition of her. Like most pixie narratives, Paper Town rarely lingers on who Margot is as a person. We're just told that we should consider her as human. Verbatim. In the dialogue, we know more about what she's not than who she actually is. For instance, and this is what really got me, John, I've got to say, Margot is absent for a majority of the book. Like other pixie narratives, she appears in Q's life, ropes him into a massive adventure, hints at a possible romance between them, and then disappears. All of this happens in the first 82 pages. For the next 200 pages, John, we hear nothing about Margot that isn't directly filtered through Q. On page 282, we finally hear from Margot again. Her first words are, "Give me like 5 minutes," after which she collapses into silence once more. Q watches her, like he has always watched her, like every pixie is watched from afar. The road trip Q took to find Margot is longer in pages than their reunification, and her monologue about leaving. This monologue still focuses entirely on Q, by the way, because she spends most of it reciting a story she wrote about him when they were kids. We learn nothing really about who she is outside of his orbit, nothing in her own words. We're told that we should care about this stuff, but how can we when we don't know what that stuff is? Paper Towns is 305 pages long. The first 82 pages barely count when it comes to developing Margot's character because Q is still viewing her with rose-colored glasses. Since she's gone for 200 pages, that leaves just 23 where we get a measured contention with Margot the person rather than Margot the idea. And then, nothing. It's impossible to determine the kind of life Margot lives once the books end. Quentin's future is alluded to. He'll go to college and maybe have kids. But when he asks Margot about her future, she practically shrugs. We know she'll go to New York, but more importantly, we know that she wants him to come with her. When he turns her down, they make shaky plans to see each other again someday. Her existence is flattened, one final time, into the space between his bones. When Q realizes she won't come back home with him, and that he won't go to New York with her, Margot gets erased from the narrative, disposed of, like all other pixies. The Manic Pixie Dream Girl does not exist outside the troubled man's fantasy. She exists only as long as he desires.
Oh, and Margot? Whatever she's up to, I'm sure it's pretty something. That's her story to tell.
It's a metaphor!
Oh, brother!
Hello? What about me?
No, you're not in this episode.
The reason interventionist texts often fail is because it's impossible to write about the pixie without fortifying our fantasy of her. The key phrase in that sentence is write about. Interventionist texts are almost always written from the perspective of someone else, someone who is watching the pixie, which in turn reinforces the archetype. While first-person narratives can also face this problem, I would argue that a solution to this problem is to put the pixie in the driving seat. Let her narrate her own story. Point of view greatly impacts the relationship we have with characters. First-person singular allows for greater intimacy between the narrator and the viewer. We get insight into their interior life. But this view is also limited. We can only experience what the narrator experiences. We can only see what they see.
I see nothing.
When the voice of the pixie narrative is that of its leading man, we fail to understand the dream girl. He can't possibly know the intimate terrain of her life, her thoughts, and personhood. What's worse? He might never even ask. That is, unless it relates back to him. The solution to the pixie problem isn't a book that centers the one doing the looking. The solution is to center the one being looked at. It's to give the women in these narratives futures, goals, and interiors. Most of all, girl, they need backbones. I am so sick of metaphors. Where's my lighter? Fuck. Laura Mulvey coined the term the male gaze in her seminal 1975 work, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. By now, the theory has been featured in every feminist publication, every Instagram infographic, and every video essay between now and the time of the dinosaurs. Girl, let's make this quick, okay? The male gaze dictates that men look while women are looked at. Mulvey's initial focus was Hollywood cinema. She argued that the camera, the leading man, and the audience are voyeurs who watch the woman on screen. The most famous example of this theory is bodily fragmentation. The camera, acting both as our eyes and the eyes of the leading man, zooms in on key parts of the woman's body, cutting her into pieces, never viewing her as whole. In this way, women on screen are made into sexual objects for our pleasure. Bodily fragmentation is very common in the Manic Pixie narrative. Take this scene in Looking for Alaska. The leading man, Pudge, asks the pixie-ish Alaska a question. What's the labyrinth? Between his last syllable and her answer, he spends a diabolical amount of time detailing her body. Now is as good a time as any to say that she was beautiful. Not just beautiful, but hot too, with her breasts straining against her tight tank top, her curved legs swinging back and forth beneath the swing. It was right then, between when I asked her about the labyrinth and when she answered me, that I realized the importance of curves. She breasted boobily. Mind you, he keeps going, but we'll stop here. While the pixie's body may be leered at, her quirky personality is the main object of fetishization. We create fragments of her fashion, her intensity, her wisdom, and her mind. That scene from Looking for Alaska is bodily focused, but it's bookended by her intelligence. Pudge is curious about what she has to say. Sounds like a romantic endeavor to humanize the people we love, like we care about the pixie's interests and whims. But really, we're looking at her the same way we look at a self-help book or a wild animal who just stumbled into the street. What will she do for me? What will she do to me? Y'all take card here. The Manic Pixie Dream Girl is pop culture's covert investment in whiteness. The narrative landscape that the pixie populates is defined by white normativity. That is, boring American suburbs and middle to upper class tedium. Pixies and their peers are largely white. Their misogynistic writing is reminiscent of traditionally conservative gender roles. Women, white women especially, living to serve their husband and home. When people of color are featured in these narratives, they are sidekicks. And, all of that is fine, whatever, who cares? I don't. I don't expect my local misogynistic film trope to be diverse or woke. If it was, it would no longer be my local misogynistic film trope. But I still like waxing poetic about the implications. Frequent flyer. While the pixie is undeniably a byproduct of misogyny, writer-directors still present her as the ideal. She is a witty, desirable ingenue who has cracked the code of life. If we were to graft these traits onto anyone other than a young white woman, especially one who is not cis-hetero, skinny, abled, or wealthy, etc., she instantly becomes unappealing to audiences everywhere. Tammy Winfrey Harris, quoted in Jennifer Guck's article, argues, "The affectations of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl are differently read on Black women. A streak of pink in the hair goes from quirky and youthful to ghetto on a Black body. Thrift store clothing leads to a host of class assumptions." Manic Pixie Dream Girls reinforce the norm of whiteness while pretending to embody difference. It reminds me of the femme cannibal trend we covered in the last chapter. Tasked with imagining a revolutionary character, writers and audiences alike often reach for the safest option, a privileged white woman. The thing is, though, marginalized women share a lot in common with the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Even though their characters are rarely labeled as such, they're often written using the same formula. Race, class, and sexuality all impact a character's to-be-looked-atness. These identities become sexual objects for the voyeur's visual pleasure. Take the Black Jezebel stereotype, or the promiscuous working-class woman, or the lesbian whose identity is perverted on screen for the pleasure of men. Like the pixie, these identities face a sudden disappearance when they no longer gratify the gaze. Linda Dittmar argues that mainstream culture would have you believe just about all women are white. They are rarely old or even middle-aged, and they are all conventionally beautiful. Just about none loves a member of their own gender. Even friendships among women are rare and unimportant. This is erasure in action. In mainstream media, emphasis on mainstream media. In mainstream media, Black women are often reduced to stereotypes. We're the funny sidekick or the no-nonsense, neck-rolling best friend. Colorism in, Black productions often see Black women, especially dark-skinned Black women, being the butt of the joke or the angry person or, etc., etc. Our only purpose in largely white narratives is to problem solve for the much more desirable, much more centered white cast. Queer people have faced a similar fate. A 30-year-long production code in the 20th century forbade the inclusion of sex perversion, leading writer-directors to resort to stereotypes to code a character as queer. Even after the code dissolved, queer people still faced invisibility and distortion, serving mildly as stereotypical besties to the straight cis character, or worse, as predators. The further you travel along racial, class, or gender performance lines, the more invisible queer people become. Black trans people are rarely given a voice in the mainstream. Trans representation in mainstream film in general, while growing since the 90s, is marginal or downright negative. All of these identities are reduced to fantastical caricatures, much like the pixie. They're designed to provide something to the majority white, straight, cis, middle to upper class audience. They provide sad but shallow stories to make the viewer feel grateful for their life or to feel better for watching something with, an undesirable in it. They provide comedy relief or shallow companionship. They even provide their voices when their physical presence is not desired. Janelle Hobson notes how Black women are visually invisible in mainstream films, and yet our music is used to give the white lead courage or charm. It's a fraught, lonely existence, but most of all, it's manufactured. There's a door, a key, a way out. Much like the 5th season of Stranger Things, the fate of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is largely up to audience interpretation. I didn't even watch that season, by the way. I know my limits. The pixie is either dead or transformed. She exists, ironically, as a surface-level style icon on social media and a point of discourse for media geeks. The label has also spun largely out of control. Accusations of one being a pixie has reached levels of witchery. No longer is it an archetype folded between the pages of film journals. It's a pop culture juggernaut that renews every year, even despite its mounting death rattle. Modern Girls made a film list of Manic Pixie Dream Girls. At the time of writing, it was updated 1 month ago. Out of the 107 movies to appear on the list, most are from the 2000s and early 2010s. None occur past 2016. A user by the name of Melissa made a similar list. At the time of research, it included 122 films. Much like Modern Girls' list, most of the movies were released in the 2000s and 2010s. The 2020s section is decidedly thin. While the Pixie reigned supreme for a short decade, people were singing her eulogy as early as 2008. By 2009, the archetype received its most iconic intervention, 500 Days of Summer. Mark Webb, the director, argued that the leading man, Tom, doesn't see the Pixie's summer's complexity, and the consequence for him is heartbreak. The Pixie's death or transformation might be Nathan Rabin's doing. He put a name to the problem, and as Margaret Eby argues, the moment you call attention to a type, it begins receding, only to be replaced by something else. Maybe it's for the best. In 2014, Rabin placed the final nail in the Pixie's coffin, with a formal apology for coining the term. At the end of his letter, he declares that he would welcome its erasure from public discourse and applaud the end to articles about its countless different permutations. What follows is a solemn swan song. Quote, "Let's all try to write better, more nuanced and multi-dimensional femme characters. Women with rich inner lives and complicated emotions and total autonomy, who might strum ukuleles or dance in the rain, even when there are no men around to marvel at their free-spiritedness." End quote. No metaphors needed.